My guest today is Jeff Johnston, who is a founder of Choices Network, a nonprofit organization he started after losing his oldest son, Seth, to a heroin overdose in 2016. In today's episode, Jeff reviews his book, This One's For You, An Inspirational Journey Through Addiction, Death, and Meaning. Welcome to my show, Jeff.
Hi, James. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited to talk about this project and to try to, through our storytelling, see if I can help others along the way and help myself improve my well-being in my life.
Yes. You know, I want to honor your memory, your journey with Seth. I can't even imagine how difficult it is, not only grieve, but then also become more of a public figure and then talk about that as well as you continue to grieve. How in the world do you do that?
Well, I'm into compartmentalizing things. And so grief and depressive moments and anger, all these things I've learned to kind of put into boxes and deal with them and then move on. But, my why is one thing that got me to where I'm at. I think whenever anybody has something happen to them, if they're able to find their why, and in my case, losing a son to heroin and then losing a 21-year marriage, and then being an alcoholic myself, I had to do a lot of digging and what was my why? And I figured out my why was three things. My why was, first of all, to save my life. Selfishly, this project I'm on, the Living Undeterred Mindset project that I've embarked on about 4 months ago, was selfishly to keep me from joining my son at this point. I love him, but I'm not willing to go yet, to see him. I've got too many things I want to do while I'm alive here. So it was to save myself, to honor Seth, and then to try to help others in that order. And ultimately, if I can do all those simultaneously, that would be the perfect scenario.
Sure.
That's my why. And then why me? I think for me, losing a son to heroin, losing a marriage, and then figuring out a way to become a better man. I'm a better human being than I was before all that happened. And through sharing my story, I can show or teach people how I did it. And it's nothing miraculous or heroic. It's just some processes and some things I did, very structured in my life, like meditation and not drinking and stoicism and things I got into heavily that literally helped me glue all this together. Wow. So now at 55, I'm stronger emotionally than I've ever been in my entire life.
Congratulations. That's the thing. Life often gives us opportunities. If something is a stumbling block or becomes a stepping stone. And in that, we always have a choice. And often we don't realize we have a choice, but until after that initial time of grieving, because we all have that initial response. And then once that time passes, then we have to remind ourselves, well, what do I do with this? And so that becomes when the choice is activated. So good for you for being able to do that. Tell me about Seth.
Choices.
I'll
tell you about Seth. Seth was a great kid. At 15, I was coaching him in basketball. He liked to play guitar. Like to go to the prom and dances and get a cell phone, all the things every 15-year-old. He had two little brothers, Ian and Roman. And then at 16, the doctor said, hey, you have ADD, take Adderall. And that started us a journey of 8 years of, Adderall, marijuana, alcohol, cocaine, prison, and then death by heroin at 23. And so I got to witness that and actively partake in that. And the most helpless feeling as a human is your inability to get someone to change destructive behaviors when you know the outcome is going to be bad. And so, after Seth died, I realized, and I write a chapter in my book called Two Roads, where the day Seth died, I told my two boys, they were 15 and 13 at the time, I said, boys, we have two roads to go down. We have one road of anger, despair, and hatred, and we'll become alcoholics and addicts ourselves. Or we have a road of inspiration and motivation where we can use this as the single greatest moment in our life to change our lives and those around us. I'm on the second road. You guys can join me. And I didn't tell them what to do. I thought it was important as a dad to show them what to do, not to tell them what to do. Because I know when my parents told me what not to do, that didn't work very well.
Exactly. Especially at that age, too. It's their time they really have to figure out who they are themselves.
Yeah, and children deal with death so different. And, when you're 13 and 15 and you have to go to your older brother's funeral, there's a lot of studies that I emphasize in my book about sibling death and how adolescents view it even different than losing a parent. And it stays with them the rest of their life. And I tried to make it clear, James, for my boys that, this is a competitive advantage that you have. Your sibling rivalry, your friend group doesn't have this arrow in the quiver to deal with the death of a brother. Don't let this be a broken arrow. This is something that you have to use to transform your life into something positive. And both my boys are absolutely have done heroic things I could spend hours talking about. The money they've raised, the presentations they've done on behalf of their brother. It's humbling, very humbling.
Wow. And first off, thank you so much for sharing that. And I'm going to be very careful how I ask this question. With the loss of somebody, often we can lose other things as well. You said your marriage ended as well.
Right.
With that, with so many losses, it sounds like everyone's handled things differently. With that, that's another quiver in your arrow, another arrow in your quiver as well, as were dealt something that you weren't also expecting. So there's a parallel process there. Not only did you tell your kids about that, but also with your marriage ending and transitioning to something else, but that was something you then had an opportunity to say, what do I do with that too?
I love the word opportunity. Death was handed on a silver platter to me as an opportunity to become a better man. Yeah. And I embraced it and formed my nonprofit called the Choices Network. I have the Living Undeterred project now that I'm using what you're doing kind of as a high bar. You know, I want to get out there and tell my story and help people. And that's what you're doing. That's what you're doing. And, you know, kudos to what you're doing. And hopefully people watching this today can realize that, hey, you know, Jeff had these tough things happen to him, but he's done some really good things out of it. So I wanted a net positive, James. So buried a child, buried a marriage. I had to find things that I didn't want to break even.
Yes.
I didn't want to break even. I wanted to be a net positive. So I have even bigger projects now I'm working on that are very intriguing. And as an ADD person myself, which I have to assume you are too.
A little bit, yes.
It's a superpower. I can't shut it off. I cannot shut off my active mind, and that's one of the reasons why I didn't do drugs. I knew I would get addicted to them.
Yes.
But I had a compulsive gambling problem for 20 years, and I talk about that in my book as well, about how as a financial advisor, you know, being a compulsive gambler, isn't a good thing to confess. But I beat it. I figured out a way to trick my brain that even when I win, I lost. And I had my brain convinced that I could win all the money in the casino, but I still was walking out a loser. And that's how I treated my ability to quit alcohol, to quit drinking as well.
Wow. You've been through a lot of things in your own life. And I love the fact that you are continually searching for something. And so with the loss of Seth, you're searching for answers, not only for yourself, but also to help people as well. When you look back at your life, it would be obvious that you still struggle at times because we all do. But moving forward, it sounds like this is a great platform for you, that anything that comes your way, now you know that you have the tools to be able to accomplish and overcome any other potential tragedy you may have in the future.
Yeah, I've got this thing, and I have a sticky note on my computer. It says, be less impressed, be more in action. And what that is a mindset that I love social media. I like comments and liking people. And I like all these conversations, but at the end of the day, I'm not a talker, I'm a doer. And I would rather, instead of having a 2-hour dialogue about addiction, go out and start a company where I can help people get together and talk about addiction, or start a nonprofit, or do a golf tournament. Or I'm not comfortable sitting around doing nothing, and I'm not really interested in talking.
Good for you.
Yeah, and it's just something. So be less impressed, be more inspired. I think I heard Matthew McConaughey say that on an interview. I'm driving my car and I'm going, man, I love that. I love that. So I pulled over and had to write it down.
That's funny. That's hysterical. Tell me more about your nonprofit.
My nonprofit is called the Choices Network. Yeah, and I didn't want a anti-drinking sobriety thing. I'm not really into that. Yeah. It's all about choices, and people can choose to drink responsibly. I'm not anti-alcohol. I'm not anti-marijuana. I'm not anti-most drugs. I think the inevitability of these things becoming legal, we have to learn to get our kids to know that just because marijuana is legal doesn't mean you have to smoke it. You know, and I don't think I think parents are naive in the reality that these things are coming, even psychedelics eventually. And so Choices was just a perfect name for my organization, to not tell people what to think, but to tell kids how to think.
Exactly.
You know, massive difference in thought process there.
And it's also the normalization of things, as well as if we hide something and say, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But we don't just normalize something that you will have opportunities, whether it's using a substance, whether it's doing whatever it is. When you normalize the fact that that is an everyday thing or a potential everyday occurrence, then it removes the stigma from it. It removes the taboo of it. And in that, then you can have a healthy conversation, a healtly dialogue to say, well, these are the choices that you could have, and these are the outcomes, positive or negative outcomes, but there's always going to be an outcome. Which do you want? And which one nets you? Which one moves you towards the goal you have in life?
One stigma, James, I'm happy you brought that up, is parents and adults think that kids are doing these things as an escape. And the reality is most of them are doing it as an exploration.
Yeah.
And so, I think we just assume, why is Junior drinking beer? He's trying to escape some problem he has. Well, that's not necessarily, I didn't drink alcohol as a 15-year-old because I was escaping abuse or anything. I was just curious, So I think as parents, we need to say, that's fine. Be curious. I'm 55. I'm curious in a lot of things. But in that curiosity quest, there are consequences.
Yes, sir.
And if you're going to have 6 beers and get behind the wheel, you may get home safe the one time, but the second time you do, you may not. And there's a consequence to all these things. Yeah. So I think as adults, that we need to just really approach this from a level of understanding with our children, not lecturing, And I learned a lot of things with Seth. I learned a lot of things I could have done better as a dad. And instead of taking those to my grave with, tons of baggage and guilt, I've let all that go. I have no guilt with my son's death. And I'm trying to create heaven on earth right now, that I can see him every day. Talking with you, I see him. And that's how I want to live my life. And I have right now, I'm the most at peace I've ever been in my life. And it's just going to get better. And I'm going to do it by honoring him. That's how I'm going to do it.
Congratulations. Let's transition into your book. This one's for you, An Inspirational Journey Through Addiction, Death, and Meaning. Tell me more about that.
Well, the idea was my son, when Seth died, we started a GoFundMe account, and we raised a bunch of money initially. And my middle son, Ian, who's a competitive golfer at the University of South Dakota right now, Division I golfer, he came up with this idea that every time he made a birdie, he would point his putter in the air and say, "This one's for you," and we'd raise money. Well, we raised like $20,000 or $30,000 through junior golf. He won the Jerry Cole Sportsmanship Award through the AJGA, which they picked one junior golfer in the world, male or female, to win this award, and they gave it to my son. And Zach Johnston, the professional golfer, narrated a 9-minute documentary on CBS about our journey using golf to deal with trauma. So if people just Google CBS Sports Ian Johnston, they can see the documentary. So golf and sports was just a great way for me to escape. And then we raised all this money. And from there, the nonprofit now is kind of the receiving end of the charity that we're getting from people. But the book's an unbelievable story, how through such a traumatic event, some unbelievable things have happened. And I'm not a big believer in synchronicity, but at some point you kind of go, wow, there's something to this.
Sure.
I don't know what it is, but golf had a lot to do with my healing. Had a lot to do with it.
When I think about this overall, you were able to find something, and that's how legacies are created. I can't remember the woman who created MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, but unfortunately that was because her daughter was killed by a drunk driver. And there's so many things that can come out of this. What is a legacy you want to see that comes out of this tragedy?
Ironic you say that. The last question in my sentence is the life's final exam is not graded until after your death in the form of the legacy you leave. What will your legacy be?
Wow.
And that's my last sentence.
Really?
In the book. Yeah.
That's really cool.
And I don't go through the book trying to answer questions for people. I try to ask questions to get people to use my book as a guide.
Good.
So what my legacy is simply that through chaos, through life is chaos. I mean, the earth is just a spinning ball of matter that is, in motion and chaotic. From that, we can build beautiful, awesome ideas, and we can actually implement these things to help ourselves and help others. So I guess that's kind of how I look at things. Through death and loss, great things can happen, and they have to happen. I have no plan B. My only plan is to succeed in what I'm doing. I mean, my plan B was probably suicide. Yeah. And that's not a very good option. Yeah. So
when I spoke with you before, you tell me about you spoke about something. There was a 14-year-old boy that came up to you and was crying.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me more about that?
Stage. The opening part of my book was my epiphany moment, James, and it was a 14-year-old I had come up to me after a class I did talking about what happened to us. And he after everyone left, he came up and he had tears in his eyes, and I felt like I said something that hurt his feelings. And he said, Jeff, I just want to tell you, I'm 14 and I'm an alcoholic and I've been in treatment. And it hit me. I got all extremely emotional. And I looked at him thinking, here I am telling my story, wanting people to kind of feel sorry for me. And here's this precious little boy, 14, that is an alcoholic. And I said, wow, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And he handed me a note, James, and it said, Mr. Johnston, stay strong. And I thought to myself, here's a 14-year-old telling me to stay strong. It's like, geez, I got to get off my ass and start working. I got things I got to do. And that motivated me to start writing my book. That day I got home, I said, if I died, all these things I have in my ADD head are going to go for nothing. So I got to write this down. Wow. I took a year of my life and wrote the book. And that's how I came up with This One's For You. It's for Seth. It's for James. It's for my ex-wife. It's for my children. It's for everybody out there that's struggling with addiction, substance abuse, and mental health.
Yeah. Well, that young man, the 14-year-old, hopefully if he watches you again or reads more about you, hopefully then he will realize how much he impacted you, and hopefully also recognizes that he too has a purpose and a plan for his life as well.
Yeah, I did actually talk to him. I gave my cell phone number to call me, and about 6 months later, he called me. And I did talk to him for about a half hour on the phone. And he had been sexually abused as a young boy. And that was his drinking, and his parents were alcoholics. And so, what is my why? Man, if I can't find a why with what's happened to me in the last 4 years, then what the hell am I doing? I mean, what else do I need, Yeah,
exactly. What is some of the in the press, if you will? So your book's been published. What's some of the reviews that you've received?
The reviews have been great. I think a lot of people that are going through some of these things are afraid to read it. I had Steve Grant, who lost his only 2 boys to heroin overdoses, who was a good beginning in my book. I actually called Steve. He has a book called Don't Forget Me. And he lost Chris and Kelly 5 years apart, his only 2 sons. This was 20 years ago, before the opioid epidemic was a household name. But he's raised over $1 million through his Chris and Kelly Hope Foundation. And I would strongly suggest you reach out to Steve. He's my role model for what I'm trying to do. And, people like that I'm meeting every day that have been through some amazing things. And now I forgot what your question was.
No, what were the reviews? You're doing you answered it.
Reviews have been good, but people have been afraid to read it because they think that it's going to be some sad story.
Yeah.
It's not. You're going to put the book down. You're going to walk down the hallway. You're going to hug your kids. You're going to tell them you love them every single day. You're going to go to that gravesite of, somebody you love. It may not be a child that you lost, but we've all lost somebody.
We have.
And we all have a relationship that's fractured, and we got to bury the hatchet. Seth had a child that he didn't know. When he died, his girlfriend was pregnant. So I have a 4-year-old granddaughter named Brighton.
Gosh.
And her dad's dead, and her mom lost custody for heroin. So this little 4-year-old angel has no parents. And, I'm not going to allow that cycle to continue for her. So I want her to know about her son, and I'm not going to hold back the good and bad. I'm sorry, about her dad, the good and bad. So when she gets to be at that age where she's going to start making choices, she can understand that she needs to be very focused, that she has some risk levels now being a child of this stuff. Yeah. And I'm excited about my future. I cry 7-10 times a day, and I embrace it. I've never been depressed. I have the worst depressive moments I've ever had that anyone could have, but I've never been depressed. I trick my brain not to really believe in depression. It doesn't work for me. Yeah.
And of course that's nothing to say that it doesn't affect other people. I know we're specifically talking about you, but yeah, exactly. That's right. Good. What's next for you?
Depression's a terrible thing. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. What's next for you? So you have the Choices Network, you've written your book. What's next for you and your platform?
My next platform is I want to start a company. I want to start an online community similar to what Mike did. But I want to focus with adolescents and youth, so giving them a platform to go to, a free resource where anonymously they could talk. I mean, I've taken so many phone calls from my son's friends that say, hey, I don't want to talk about any of this, but I know you've been through this, but I thought about killing myself last night. And so, it's like, I'm just a dad. You have the clinical expertise, James. I don't, but I have some of the life lessons that other people haven't had, that I think if I can get together with the clinical people, that maybe the two of us can do some really good here to get people together, get connected. I'm in the middle of doing a documentary now.
Oh, wow.
That I want to. Yeah, I hired a guy named Antarctic Mike. He's a rock star. He's all over social media. He trained for 2 years to run a marathon in the Antarctic, and his story is inspiring. But he's going to come out here to Iowa and do a documentary, so I can start sending this out to get more speaking engagements to start spreading the word. So those are just two projects I have in mind that I'm going to be working on.
That's amazing.
And I'm not going to let Seth down, man. I'm no less a dad now just because he's not here. I'm still his dad, and
yes, you are.
That's what I'm going to be. I'm always going to be his dad, and I'm excited. I'm proud of him. I'm real proud of him for what the impact he's had on my life.
Yes,
extremely proud of him, and I'm not going to let him down.
Yes, and we truly honor that as well. He sounds like an amazing young man, and so I'm so glad I got to hear more about him as well.
Yeah.
One thing you had mentioned, Mike, you were referring to Mike Russell, who is the founder of Join Monument. So Monument is an online platform for those who struggle with their connection with alcohol. So that's the person with whom my listeners, so they know who you're talking about.
Yeah,
so
I've listened to quite a few of your shows, and you guys did a great job. That was a great show.
Thank you. Yeah, he's a phenomenal person. Yeah, we'll definitely link people with him as well. We only have a couple more seconds here. What's your final thoughts about all this, about everything you've learned in your life?
I would say my final thought is another phrase I kind of stole from Viktor Frankl in Man's Search for Meaning is pain is unavoidable, but suffering is a choice.
Exactly.
And he said opportunity or suffering is my opportunity. So I kind of rephrased it. But I kind of look at pain as something that's just part of living, but the suffering isn't.
Yeah, exactly.
You choose how you want to suffer, but you can't really choose your pain. I couldn't choose the pain of Seth dying, but I certainly can choose how long I'm going to let that affect me negatively.
Yes.
And I decided that I need to control my suffering. That's what I decided to do.
Well, congratulations. Well, Jeff Johnston, it has been an absolute pleasure having you on my show today. If my listeners want to find out more information about you and to learn more about the Choices Network and also to purchase your book, This One's For You, An Inspirational Journey Through Addiction, Death, and Meaning, where will they find all this information online?
The best place, James, is www.livingundeterred.com. I also post a weekly blog and an hour-long podcast interview I do each week.
Oh, wonderful! I didn't even know about that. Excellent.
Yep.
Well, my listeners also
you're my template, so I'm trying to emulate what you're doing because I got so much respect for you, man. You're doing a great job, James.
Thank you so much. I truly appreciate that. My listeners also know that if they can't find your information any other place, simply go to the show notes at jamesmillerlifeology.com, and I will link you with this amazing person. Have a wonderful day. Thank you so much again for being a guest on my show today.
I'm honored. Thank you.